declarations by the President and several cabinet secretaries. Many of the appointees are those that lost in the 2017 general elections and whose silver lining has come in the shape of the March 9th handshake between President Uhuru and Raila Odinga. The list includes a former governor and several former legislators. Former Kajiado Governor David Olenke Dienye, former Mwingi Central MP Joe Mutambo, and former Machakos Governor contestant Wavinya Ndeti are some of those who have been appointed to head the boards of various government agencies. Whether poll losers should be appointed to these roles is for another day. But let's focus on the appointment of one gentleman by the name Jared Peter Odoyo Kwaga to the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication Board, an appointment made by Information Cabinet Secretary Joe Musheru. This name looked just like the many others on the list until the appointment was revoked by CS Musheru via another Kenya Gazette just 2 days later. This is because finally information somehow trickled down to the ministry that this man was in fact being investigated as part of that 2 billion shilling probe on Migori Governor Okoth Obado. Now this is surprising. Just how are these appointments made? Isn't there some kind of background check? Maybe even some report from the NIS or some other government agency? This alleged scandal was widely publicized. It graced newspaper headlines for days. How could it have escaped the attention of the ministry, which is in charge of, among other things, information itself? How do we know that any of the other appointees do not have a scandal somewhere just waiting to erupt? Rights activist Okiya Omtata has now moved to court to block the appointment of these poll losers. Who knows what bombshell awaits us there when details emerge on each of these appointees? There's a basic rule in handling information. Just verify the story before publishing it. That is my memo tonight.
And my kicker tonight has got a prelude, a tweet from Donald Kipkorir, lawyer. The inquest ruling on Baby Pendo confirms an eternal truth. In the height of political campaigns and in the middle of the fog of war, false impunity prevails. But when the seasons are over, when chips are down, personal responsibility arises. After campaigns and war, you are on your own. Let's go now to the top of my kicker tonight. And it is American civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. that once said, quote, "Let us realize that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." Tonight, on this St. Valentine's Day, Joseph Abanja and Lensa Chieng can relate to this quote, or at least begin to. In a landmark inquest, Kisumu Senior Resident Magistrate Barry Lumolo found 5 police commanders culpable for the death of Baby Pendo. If any Kenyan has forgotten, Baby Pendo was only 6 months old when she was clobbered to death inside her father's house by anti-riot police, who were supposedly out to quell protests that broke out following the outcome of the August 8th, 2017 elections. The magistrate says the 5 police commanders should be held responsible for the killing of Baby Pendo. The magistrate further ruled that an entire platoon of 31 General Service Unit personnel be probed as, quote, persons of interest. The magistrate also ruled that another 20 policemen drawn from various formations be probed. These findings are not only wide-ranging, but also seismic. The ruling brings accountability directly to individual police commanders for orders they give, and to individual police officers for their actions while on duty. Now, let us put this in context. In the period between August 8th and the repeat election on 26 October, police killed 33 Kenyans and injured more than 50, all in the name of quelling post-election protests. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International documented killings targeting opposition supporters in perceived opposition strongholds, especially in the slums. While Baby Pendo's journey to justice begins, let it not be forgotten that 9-year-old Stephanie Mura died from a suspected bullet from the police. 17-year-old Raphael Ayeko, 18-year-old Ochieng Ameso, and Shadi Okoth, also 18 years, were killed by police in Babadogo, here in Nairobi. The report titled, "Kill Those Criminals," quote, documents what it terms a systematic raid of homes of opposition followers And this explains why baby Pendo, a 6-month-old baby, died in the safety of her parents' home. All fair-minded and justice-inclined citizens would remember the unnecessary zeal of trigger-happy policemen, gleefully firing bullets and tear gas canisters all day long on the 17th of November 2017. That is my kicker.
And talking about bullets, there's one. Tomorrow could be the defining moment in the health sector in this country. The president gave the nurses until tomorrow 8 a.m. to report on duty, or else they face the sack. I highly doubt they will return. I mean, there's a precedent. When the teachers went on strike, they were threatened with a sack if they didn't go to work. They didn't. The other time when the nurses went on strike, they were threatened with a sack. They did not report until 5 months later. And it took fresh negotiations, dialogue, and people allowed reason to prevail so that eventually they could find a solution. So tomorrow, I highly doubt any nurses, especially in those counties, will go back to work, the threat of a sack notwithstanding. And while this grandstanding continues, the person who suffers is the patient, that patient who relies on public services in our health facilities. So why don't the players in this not so necessary quarrel come to a round table like this one, agree to disagree, find a solution, because eventually when they agree, one of the clauses in that agreement will be no victimization for any person who went on strike. But in the meantime, that life that was lost yesterday or last week as a result of the nurses' strike will not be recovered, whether there is any victimization or not. Actually, the real victim of this victimization is the victim who will lose their life as a result of this grandstanding. That's my punchline.
Yeah, quite somber. And still on the same issue, this week we saw the president once again being stern. This time it was with the nurses. He ordered them to report to work no later than February 15th, that's tomorrow morning. While chiding them, this is what he said, and I quote, "One of the most important principles upon which our republic is established is the rule of law. No one is above the law. Obeying court orders is not optional, but a requirement of all of us," end quote. We're all equal before the law, right? Well, it may seem that some are more equal than others. Here's a trip down memory lane. In February 2018, the court ordered the Communications Authority to restore live transmission of 3 media houses: Citizen Television, KTN News, and NTV. The TV stations had been switched off after Ryla's swearing in. Justice Chacha Mwita said that the respondents, that's the Communications Authority and CSS Mushero and Matiang'i, can not be allowed to disobey court orders and choose when to comply with orders, then come back to court in purport of full compliance. Still in 2018, in the case against Miguna Miguna, Inspector General of Police Joseph Boynet was ordered to release Miguna on a bond of 50,000. On February 6th, Justice Kimaru ordered the DCI Kinoti to produce Miguna in court. He was not produced in court, and we all know what happened thereafter. But seems like 2018 was a really good year for contempt of court. In that same year, the shoe was seemingly on the other foot. Communications Authority Director General Francis Wangusi had been barred from entering his office despite getting a court order that lifted his suspension. In 2017, CS Matiang'i, then acting in the Ministry of Interior, was once again cited for contempt of court. This time, it was in the case regarding Fazul Mohammed, the then Executive Director of the NGO Coordination Board. On December the 7th, the Employment and Labor Relations Court stopped efforts aimed at renewing or extending his contract. In a suit filed against Dr. Matiang'i by activist Okia Omtata, Justice Helen Wasilwa issued a temporary order pending the hearing and determination of the case. Mr. Mohammed's contract, if you remember, had ended on November the 23rd. However, he would later exit at a time of his choosing. In 2016, Justice Mativo sentenced 5 PSs to civil jail for contempt of court for disobeying court orders. The 5 from the Ministries of Transport and Lands had been ordered in June of 2013 to pay Mr. Wilson Kamau Maina close to 350,000 shillings in compensation for injuries to his mother, Ms. Bilha Wangoi Maina. That same year, Willie Bett, then CS for Agriculture, was also cited for contempt. Vehicles belonging to the Agricultural Sectoral Coordination Unit were seized despite a court order prohibiting the same. I'm not done. A little further back in 2014, in August, President Uhuru Kenyatta led an operation to blow up a ship packed with heroin worth 1.3 billion shillings. The government was trying to prove their tough stance against drug trafficking at the time. Now remember, this was part of an ongoing case. The magistrate ordered the drugs destroyed, but not the ship, as it was also still an exhibit because of a pending application. The order was made at 2:30 p.m. The ship was blown up in the Indian Ocean at 4 p.m. on the same day. The then president of LSK, Eric Mutua, criticized President Uhuru Kenyatta for leading the operation, terming it in bad taste, but also in contempt of court. In October 2008, the High Court ordered the TSC to process teachers' pension based on a 1997 salary award. The government finally availed the funds in 2017. That's about 17 billion shillings. This happened 18 years later, affecting 22,000 retired teachers who had to wait over 10 years for their dues. These are just a few examples. The list is by no means exhaustive. You can feel free to add more cases to this list. So rampant were these incidents of contempt of court or disobeying court orders by the executive that the Chief Justice last year issued a statement. He said, "Compliance with court orders is not an option for any individual or institution. Neither is it a favor to be doled out to the judiciary." The Office of the Ombudsman and the Law Society of Kenya weighed in also, saying the trend would only engender lawlessness. The UN and the European Union cautioned the executive against undermining the authority of the courts. Folks, don't get me wrong. Everyone, including the nurses, should obey court orders. But then again, here we are. And that is my take tonight.
My angle tonight, and it is about death. I should be more precise, the death penalty. Today, the High Court here in Nairobi sentenced former Raraka OCS Nahashon Mutua to death for killing an inmate 6 years ago. Justice Stella Mutuku ruled that Mutua should hang for intentionally causing the death of Martin Kwame, who had been arrested over a domestic brawl in 2013 but died from injuries sustained in police cells. Just 2 days ago, appellate judges Philip Waki, Rosalind Nambuye, and Patrick Kiage upheld the death sentence of a woman, Ann Waithera, and 5 of her relatives for the murder of her husband. Now, these are most likely very well-deserved sentences. I mean, anyone who kills another person, especially in such intentional and malicious ways, needs to be punished, and very severely so. The families of these victims most likely went home feeling relieved that justice had finally been served, that somehow the people who cut short the lives of their loved ones would meet a similar fate. But I'm sure even the judges who hand down these death sentences know that it is an exercise in futility. No one is hanged in this country anymore. The best information available suggests that the ill-fated leader of the 1982 abortive coup, Hezekiah Ochuka, was the last person to be executed by the state. That was way back in 1987, 32 years ago. I don't know about you, but I find it strange that we have kept the death penalty in our law books. In fact, even the 2010 Constitution provides that the state has the right to kill you, legally of course, but we don't want to kill people. My point is not whether the death penalty is right or wrong. That's a debate for another day. But I think that the choice here is simple. We either put these people to death exactly the way the law provides, or if we don't have the stomach to do it, let's remove that law from our constitution and our law books so that the judges can know this option is not available and that the victims can finally take these judgments for what they truly are. Sounds like common sense to me. That's my angle tonight.
Lots of common sense. But here's one final one. Mohamed Sirlam. Jamila Mohamed, Dada, while you were busy on Newsgang, your favorite team, Arsenal, were thrashed by a little-known club, Bate Borisov, from Belarus, of all countries.
This is the first. This is ya kwanza, awamu ya kwanza. So you're meeting them in a couple of weeks at Emirates.
I can't even pronounce the name.
Ngoja tu. This is
Is this a very good way to end the show? Or what?
Fantastic, good.
Even I thought you were my friend.
As Willis Raburu says, successful people look like you, look like me, Manchester United.
You wish.
Bate Borisov. I must learn how to pronounce that name. God knows which team this is.
Borisov.
You see, you know how to pronounce the team that beat you.
Tunawagonga to the
Jamila,
Emirates. Give them
happy
2 weeks.
Valentine's.
And to you too, Joe. Thank you.
Happy Valentine's, everyone. Good night.
So are we going for the conference again?
Oh yeah, you can go for the men's conference. You're free to go.
You know, we came
You
purposely
are
for this.
dismissed.
Kwa ndani hapo.